Welcome back. You're still tuned in to News and Views with myself, Salada Makudire. The time is 10 minutes before top of the hour 9. And we're going to be looking at a very, very important story a bit closer to home. South Africa's livestock sector is facing what many farmers are calling the worst animal health crisis in a century. The outbreak of foot and mouth disease has spread across the country, forcing quarantines, restricting livestock movements, and putting enormous financial pressure on farmers and the broader agricultural value chain. Now, the Southern African Agri Initiative, also known as SAAI, SAAI, has launched an urgent High Court application against the government. They are arguing that the state's centralized control over vaccines is slowing the response and making the crisis even worse. The farmers say they're currently prevented from importing or administering vaccines themselves, even as the disease spreads and livestock losses mount. Meanwhile, the industry warns that South Africa could lose around 1.8 billion in export revenue in the current financial year alone because of the foot and mouth disease outbreak. And to help us unpack this legal challenge and what it means for the country's agricultural sector, we're now joined by Francois Rossouw. He's the CEO of the Southern African Agri Initiative. Francois, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to News and Views. Always a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
No, the pleasure is all ours. And I think we can kickstart the conversation with at the heart of the conversation here. The legal challenge itself. What exactly are farmers asking the court to change in the government's handling of the foot and mouth disease outbreak?
Yeah, I think it's first important to note that we are trying to achieve the same goal that the minister achieved. We want to vaccinate the national herd and we want to get that crucial herd immunity. But the only way we are going to do that is if we get the right amount of vaccines, millions, up to 14 million, but actually we need 28 million for that double dose. And the only way we are going to get that is if we get the private sector itself involved as well. And we need them, because if we have a centralized value chain of vaccines where farmers have to stand in line and wait for government to decide who gets what vaccines when, we are not going to get that. We are not going to vaccinate all of the animals in time, and then we're going to sit with the same crisis the same time next year. So this whole application is about, tell us where the current act that was written in 1984, it says that farmers cannot vaccinate their animals preemptively, and tell us the reasoning why it should not be allowed.
That's very, very important. I just want to segue a bit and talk about, the foot and mouth disease outbreak in itself. I think the last time you and I spoke, there were no vaccines imported to the country just as yet. If you can just give insight on the current situation, the catastrophe, the outbreak in itself, how severe has it been? And right now, where are we when it comes to vaccinating the national herd? As you mentioned, do you feel like government is getting a grip on things?
Yeah, well, we see these media days where they are vaccinating cattle in certain provinces, but we speak to the farmers in hard-hit provinces like KwaZulu-Natal and Free State every morning. And there are a lot of complaints about farmers going to and officers asking for vaccines, asking when their dairies will be vaccinated, but there's just no vaccines available at that stage. We also know that 1 million vaccines landed about 2 weeks ago, which they are currently deploying across the country. And they say that they are being vaccinated, and we see some parts getting vaccine. But then we also know that 5 days ago, 1.5 million vaccines arrived at OR Tambo Airport, but they are still in fridges because of bureaucratic, I don't know how to call it else, but nonsense. So those vaccines are here, but they have not been deployed to the provinces for farmers to use them. But then again, we're only now at 2.5 million vaccines. And where are we going to start? If you listen to the president, we are going to start in the hardest hit areas in the communal, with communal farmers. If you listen to the minister, we're going to start with the dairies. And the question is that farmers are asking is, when do we as farmers have access to these vaccines if you decide decide and you prioritize who's going to get the vaccines when. So this is the huge frustration that farmers have at the moment, because if we allow these private companies with a perfect cold chain, with logistics, to get access to these vaccines, which they were willing to pay for, farmers can place their orders and it can arrive on the farm within 24 hours.
And why is it such an important point to have the farmers themselves? This is an argument that you're also making. It seems like it's the central issue when it comes to the litigation action that you guys have taken. The fact that farmers themselves should be the ones that are allowed to import and administer the vaccines themselves. Why is that such a critical point in this dispute?
We just don't have enough state veterinarians or private veterinarians. If you talk to those private veterinarians, they will all tell you they don't vaccinate themselves. They are too expensive for farmers to afford a private veterinarian to vaccinate the whole herd. It's just not possible. It's also never done. They always do the supervision and training of farmers, farm workers, and animal technicians. In all of the case studies that where foot and mouth disease have been defeated successfully, it was done in cooperation with the farmers and farm workers assisting with the vaccination efforts. We're talking about millions and millions of animals. We don't have even thousands of private veterinarians to assist with this issue. So we do need clarity on that when moving forward.
The government says the vaccination program must remain centrally controlled, and this is because apparently you need to manage the disease in order to protect South Africa's international trade status. That's the argument that they're making. Why do you believe that approach isn't working right now?
No, first of all, that's total rubbish. We received correspondence from the World Organization for Animal Health on the 25th of February. They told us categorically that they do not decide who procures vaccines, who administers it, and who rolls it out to the farmers themselves. They, as an organization, only have a certain standard that they require you to uphold when you try to get your foot and mouth disease status back. And for South Africa, that will be in between 12 and 15 years from now. We are currently losing a dairy farm a day. We are currently losing, in the last 3 weeks, we've killed 50,000 pigs. We've seen it now in the game industry. We have issues today, massive issues, that in 10 years' time, when the minister wants to apply for this status, which he's already trying to prepare for, we're not going to have any farmers left. So that argument is absolute rubbish. The other thing that also says is that, it could create a possible bioweapon. And that argument has also been laughed out by every expert that you speak to. So there's no reason not to get private sector and private industry and farmers involved in this vaccination effort, because there's nobody that cares better for their animals than the farmers themselves.
And I want to move on to, I think, the point that you just made now, just moving beyond the commercial farming sector and that aspect. How has this outbreak affected small-scale farmers and rural communities who rely almost entirely on livestock for their livelihoods, from what you have gathered?
Yeah. The fact is that if you survive the disease, which most of the normal cattle, dairy cattle are very hard hit. The pig industry is extremely hard hit. But if you do survive, your animal survives the disease, then you still have to find a viable market. Because if you were infected, your farm is usually under quarantine. You're closed off to livestock auctions. You don't have an abattoir that will be able to slaughter your animals. And this is not like a drought where you are able to sell off your livestock piece by piece in order to generate income. This stops all of your income immediately. And in fact, you pay more because now you have the upkeep of these animals and the feed that you have to pay for them. And that causes a huge financial burden for farmers.
No, most definitely. And I think we're going to on that note, Francois, thank you so much for chatting to us. Always a pleasure having you come on air to give us updates on the foot and mouth disease and just how much it's decimating the farming sector here in South Africa. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
There you go. That was the Southern African Agriculture Initiative CEO, Francois Rossouw, giving us, I think, insight on a very, very concerning turn of events, speaking to us about that urgent court challenge against the government because of the handling of the foot and mouth disease outbreak, a crisis that could have major implications for South Africa's farming sector, for food supply and export industry. It will affect you at some point because they're killing off livestock, which ultimately means the price of meat, the price of dairy, that will increase, affecting you and your pocket. So we need to keep a close eye on this one. We're going to take a quick break. News and Views continues after this.
Tune into Salam Media via audio stream.
We believe that the DA is part to cover indirect by declaring them to support Israel. There was a statement issued